because it's a blessing for the church. And so he says, well, here, take a couple more boxes. He says, okay, I will. I'll be back pretty quickly. And so 2 hours later, he returns with 2 empty boxes and $500 in cash. It's turning out to be a pretty good fundraiser for the church, right? But the pastor's kind of curious because he says, well, son, most volunteers take a box and it takes almost a month for them to sell it. He said, what are you doing and what are you saying? He says, oh, it's simple. He said, I just asked them if they want to buy a Bible or do they want me to read it to them. All right, there you go. Do you want me to read it to you? All right. So, best things first, Bjorn, Lomborg, Copenhagen consensus. This is a repeat sermon, modified a little bit. I know, Dave Wangley, you really liked this one when I did it, so if you recognize it, I apologize. Sometimes when I've written 15 sermons in a row, 15 weeks in a row, I do look up an old one and modify it. So anyway, today, we want to affirm all life is holy, and I have a slide for that. And that's the story found in Luke chapter 10, verse 34, the Good Samaritan. I need another slide there, Jack. All life is holy. And one of the passages, he went to him and bandaged his wounds, right? He went to him and bandaged his wounds, and then he put him on his own animal and took him to an inn and took care of him. Isn't that seeing what needs to be done and doing it and not being afraid to step up and not judging, turning off your judgmental, critical, or I couldn't do it, or it couldn't be me, or anything like that? So today in Volunteer Appreciation Service, I want to give thanks for each of you who share your gifts and your talents so freely with our ministry. You see what needs to be done, and you step up and do it. I have a practical example right here that's kind of a fun one. You may recognize this. How many of you know what this is? Air gun. It's an air gun. So, I was whining a couple months ago that I had a tire that kept going low with air. And I drive over to American Tire and have them fill it up. But this weekend, it was really bad. My tires hold 39 pounds. It was down at 16. And I got to the tire store, and I didn't have time for 2 hours to stay, so they filled it up and said it'll be all right. And then I got up this morning with all of your wonderful volunteer luncheon food in my car, and it was at 11 pounds. And so I thought, But I had been whining about this a few months ago, and so this kind soul bought me this and said, here, if you ever get stuck, here's your air gun, Michael Lawson. Oh, so the point is, you see a need and you fill it. Now, this is not anything a single girl would ever go and buy for herself. He took me out to the parking lot, showed me how to use it. But today, you are having lunch courtesy of Michael Lawson's air gun. And I probably have to put more air in my tires before I leave here. But the idea is you get it. You see what needs to be done and you do it. You don't think somebody else is going to do it. You step up to do it. So last year, when I did this sermon, the thing with Israel and Palestine had just started. And I said, we need to really think about saving lives, saving people, doing the right thing. And that for centuries, all the people sitting around the table trying to find the solution are working from a consciousness of an eye for an eye, right? Thousands of years old in consciousness, an eye for an eye, an eye for an eye. Well, Jesus came and upgraded that to turn the other cheek, meaning look in a new direction for a solution, or open yourself to another possible solution. So that's been around for 20 centuries or more, and it's not working, right? It's not working. So it's our opportunity to move to a third and higher way for resolution in things, turning to the infinite love and intelligence of the universal Christ consciousness and affirming and praying that it's downloaded into the minds of the people sitting around the table finding the solution. I don't have the solution. Maybe you have the solution for what's going on in all the all the places in conflict in the world, but the all-knowing mind of Christ does know. The infinite intelligence does know, and it's evolving us into greater unity on the planet. You can't see it. When you judge by appearances, it doesn't look like the whole world is moving into greater love and greater harmony and greater unity. But there is a master plan, the master's plan, and it's evolving. And so our work as volunteers on the planet is to lift our minds and our hearts into the collective consciousness of the infinite intelligence of God, omnipresent, everywhere present, omnipotent, all-powerful, omniactive, active every moment of every day. And to stay in that consciousness, to support those who are sitting around the tables in all the government agencies making all the decisions for how to resolve conflict in our world. Well, I was sparked to this message when I saw an interview with Bjorn, who was with the Copenhagen Consensus, and he said something that was pretty shocking. He said, I'm not solving world peace. I'm not solving world peace. But we're opening our minds to do the best things first for our world, to do the smartest solutions first. And gathered around their table are, they've identified 12 of the most efficient solutions, the very best policies for the world that it can improve the lives of people and also reawaken and reshape the world. So he says, and I have a slide for this, he says in his book, we all want a better world. And then he makes a compelling case for the world to pursue 12 of the most efficient global policies that will reduce suffering, improve lives, and reshape the world. And he said, peace in the Middle East isn't one of them. Not right now anyway, because we can save millions of lives and reduce suffering and reshape the world if we work on the things that we can really do and invest in the things that we can really do. So he says the 12 most cost-effective policies reduce suffering, improve lives, and reshape the world. So he says, let's do the things we can really do. Let's do the things we can really afford. Let's do the things we can really put into action. And the remarkable conclusion to that is that the best policies pay off more than 50 to 1 and save millions of lives every year. So when you think about conflict in one area, and we need healing and life and infinite intelligence there, but if millions of people could be saved from suffering and all of that, why don't we do it? He says, unfortunately, our efforts have often been hampered by wanting to achieve not just some, but all good things all at once. And many are nearly impossible, terribly inefficient, prohibitively expensive, or all of these. So he outlines in his book how to do the best things first. Let's do what we can do, let's really do it, let's take action, and let's do it. So he says, and I'm not going to load you up with a lot of statistics, because in his book, after each chapter, there's a list of all the research papers and all the numbers, and there's graphs and charts. Oh my gosh, you can't sleep. Pick it up. 10 minutes, you'll be asleep if you try to read it. But he says, for $35 billion a year, we can save 4.2 million lives every year and make the poorer half of the world more than $1 trillion better off. So $36 billion a year, 4.2 million lives, better than $1 trillion better off. And the poorer half of the world is defined as each person making between $3 and $12 a day. So we're going to improve 4 million lives, those people, and save those lives. This involves 4.1 billion people, which is almost half of the entire population on the planet. Half of the people in the world are living on $3 to $12 a day. And we want to do nothing? So, Philippians chapter 2, verses 3 and 4. Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility regard others as better than yourselves. Let each of you look not to your own interests, but to the interests of others. To the interests of others. I think I have that on a slide, Jack. Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility regard others as better than yourselves. Let each of you look not to your own interests, but to the interests of others. So, he's working with more than 300 of the world's top economists, Nobel laureates in economics, and formed this think tank called the Copenhagen Consensus. Yeah, what can we really do? What can we afford? What can we put into action? And the best policies pay off 50 to 1. Next slide, I think, is the scripture. Oh, nope, 35 billion a year. Save 4.2 million lives. Right. $15 benefit return was their goal. If we're going to invest in this, we have to get $15 back on every dollar we invest. So they had a bunch of parameters that they had to do to make things work. He formed this think tank, Copenhagen Consensus, and they've championed the benefit cost research with a goal of $15 for every dollar invested. And then he says, for example, and he's got the goals. I have a handout, a sheet in your whatchamacallit today, in your bulletin today. There's somewhere it's here. No, that's not it. Here it is. It's called Best Things First, and the 12 solutions are here. It would be impossible to talk about all of them, but I want to share just a couple. One, he talks about education, and he says, we want children to learn, not just go to school. We want them to be able to learn. And he says, so we can get them, to educate them, he wants to get them tablets. So the use of tablets to teach children. So he says, finding the cost of the tablet, that's easy. Also, then it includes, and they wrap all of the costs together to figure out the per person cost, right? My degree in finance is showing up here. So finding the cost of the tablet is easy. Training the teachers to use the technology. One tablet can be used for many years by multiple children. The tablet needs to be stored securely so that it's not stolen or damaged or goes walkabout, right? It requires lock storage. The tablet requires electricity, which means installing solar panels or other sources of energy. And all of these are factored into the cost per student per year. The benefits are more long-term, right? They arrive over many decades, he says. The main upside of a better taught child results in increased wages for that person and greater productivity in the workforce. He says, with education reform, we can ensure that almost every child in the poorer half of the world actually learns, raising their eventual incomes collectively by more than $600 billion per year. Now, when you think $3 to $12 a day, and I'm going to go to school and I'm going to raise my ability to earn income and contribute to my society. Among other goals, he talks about tuberculosis, which kills more than 1 million people a year. We can reduce the death toll from chronic diseases by 1.5 million. Interestingly, chronic diseases is on the decline, but I can't remember the other kind of disease that's on the upswing that's caused by smoking, salt, and alcohol. Diseases caused from those things are overtaking chronic diseases like that people used to die from. Avoiding hunger for more than 1 million people, they can increase yields in agriculture. So how did all of this start? When I saw him on TV saying, we're not going to solve world peace, but we're going to do something that's terrific, I remembered that in Nashville I was sparked to go to what I thought was going to be a TED Talk, but it wasn't a TED Talk. It was I had the accidental good fortune to go to a talk about Millennial Development Goals, MDGs. And they were created by the UN Secretary, Kofi Annan, and they had 8 goals with 18 specific targets that they wanted to accomplish between 2000 and 2015, right? And it included things like reduce poverty, fight disease, provide access to clean water, get every child in school. And at the end of the lecture, they said, so how are you going to participate in that? What are you going to do to help us raise funds or achieve these goals? How are you going to volunteer? How are you going to serve? And I remember there were 2 young guys there, and they were riding their bikes from Nashville to Canada and back, and were taking pledges per dollar per mile, and then they were going to contribute their funds to the climate goal was one of their favorites. So they were doing that. So over the next 15 years, between 2000 and 2015, governments, institutions, private foundations poured billions into the Millennial Development Goals. I think there's a slide for that one, Jack. And fewer people starved. Almost all boys and girls at least started school. And there was a significant drop in child mortality. Prior to the Millennial Goals, 12 million children under the age of 5 died every year. And by 2015, that number had dropped to 6 million, cut in half, resulting in 12 million parents not having to suffer the loss of a child, right? Not all of the Millennial Goals were achieved, but they were incredibly successful, saving millions of lives, and the world was a better place in 2015. So, when 2015 came and they were looking at stuff, right, my friend has a saying, anything worth doing is worth overdoing, right? So they got involved and they created sustainable development goals. There's the Millennial Goals. Then they did the sustainable ones. 17 goals with 169 targets. Back up one slide, Jack. The Millennial Goals were 8 goals with 18 specific targets, and now sustainable goals for the next 17 goals with 169 targets. That's a lot. The UN wanted to copy the Millennial Goals. Some said stick with the same goals because they didn't achieve all of them all the way, and they still had plenty of room for progress. But many wanted to tackle larger issues. So the UN adopted the Sustainable Development Goals, 17 goals with 169 targets. And you can't see the little squares, but that was each of the 17. And Bjorn said the new sustainable goals could help billions of people and transform societies alongside but he said the new goals that were added were decidedly less momentous, such as promoting sustainable tourism and boosting organic foods. So he said, don't get me wrong, ensuring these things are well-intentioned, but putting promises like the promotion of organic apples on the same level as saving lives is jarring in a world where hundreds of millions of people are starving, right? So you can see people get involved and they want their tourism, embellished tourism, really. And I'm organic. I'm all for organic, and people have to eat. But in the whole of agriculture to save the starving world, they were making a difference. He said, don't get me wrong, ensuring these well-intentioned things are good, but promising things like the promotion of organic apples on the same level as saving lives is jarring. So what comes next? He offers 12 things we can do to reduce suffering, save lives. His proposals are concrete, achievable, relatively inexpensive, and incredibly efficient. And most solutions can start delivering results within the year. And you've got the little handout in your brochure, in your bulletin, that covers the 12. It's Colossians. I think I have my slides in the wrong order, Jack. Back up to as God's chosen ones. Colossians 3:12. As God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, and patience. When you volunteer, you do that. And just like the 2 boys riding their bike and collecting dollars per mile, there are ways that we serve and give and love in this community that spreads the message of unity, that Christ in you, the hope of glory, for someone who's down and suffering and depressed and out can come in and hear a message, and you're here creating this community. My friend always says you can be the most effective volunteer if you take up an issue that's within a 50-mile radius of your own home. You don't need to go to Sri Lanka and volunteer, because within 50 miles of Auburn there are plenty of people who need assistance, who are suffering, whose lives could be improved, right? So I've chosen one solution today as an example of what Bjorn is working on. We're not there yet, but hold on. And it's an example of infinite love and intelligence working in and through the minds of the people sitting around the table at the Copenhagen Consensus think tank, right? The global intelligence that's the mind of Christ that's creating and evolving versus sometimes when we get into that around the table of an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth and turn the other cheek, and that consciousness doesn't work in our world anymore. And we're the ones sitting here every week who have to lift our consciousness to a level of love and humility and service and life. So I did tuberculosis last year, and I'm doing it again this year. Tuberculosis, he says, has been curable for over half a century, with virtually no one in the rich world dies from it, right? Yet the rest of the world, it still claims 1.4 million lives. It's killed 1 billion people, tuberculosis, over the past 2 centuries. And more than all lives, it's killed more than all lives claimed by smallpox, malaria, cholera, the plague, influenza, and AIDS combined. Tuberculosis, which is curable. It's the most lethal pathogen, micropathogen ever. And in 2022, it claimed more lives than any other infectious disease, including COVID. Think about that. And it's curable. The vaccine was discovered in 1921, has been used more than 3 billion times, and for more than half a century, we've known how to cure it. So why haven't we? And again, this research group says, so why haven't we, and what can we do about that? And he says, well, there's 2 main challenges. The first, it's difficult to get people diagnosed and then to complete the treatment, because the treatment involves taking a pill for every day for 4 to 6 months. And he says, that's a big ask. Let me ask you, raise your hands. How many of you can take the same pill for a week? For 7 days. Can you follow up on that? How about 10 days? Same pill every day for 4 to 6 months? It's a bit, you're here and it's easy for you to have your prescriptions delivered. So he said the one challenge is it's a big ask to get people to take a pill every day for 4 to 6 months. The second thing is people drop out of the treatment, which then they go back to work or go somewhere and infect 5 others, he says. But it costs almost $350. Now, if you're earning $3 to $12 a day, and you have to pay $350 for your treatment, you're going to drop out. I mean, you can't, if you have to choose, you're not going to follow through. So he says one of their solutions is incentives. Incentives can be used for to come in and get screened, for better testing, and addressing the difficulty of taking the meds and the cost. And he says incentives don't need to be that expensive. Small rewards like food, clothing, juice boxes, gift cards, nutritional supplements, subsidized bus or taxi travel to the appointments. Those will ensure 50 million more people access treatment. Juice boxes. Juice boxes. This best solution requires a sizable expenditure of $6 billion a year until 2050, but it has the potential to do incredible good while delivering an exceptional return. Of the 2.6 trillion benefits and the chance to end a needless flow of death, it will do incredible things. So, how are we going to pay for it? He's got all these 12 goals. We need $35 billion a year. How are we going to pay for it? Here you go. Fun fact. We spend $147 billion a year on pet food, and it's increasing at a rate. Now that the farmer's dog has come around with all the organic food for your pets, it's increasing way, 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 way up. I'm going to have it here. $35 billion a year may sound like a lot, but compared to the $274 billion per person, governments in poor countries are spending $274 billion a year already. Rich governments are spending $211 billion a year. They could all fund the 12 great solutions by increasing their per cost $8.50 per person. I know that's a lot of math. Don't let me do the math, but just trust me. They wouldn't have to spend a lot more. Just in America, private philanthropy spends $485 billion a year. We're talking about $35 billion a year to do all 12 solutions. See the the imbalance. 147 billion a year on pet food. The annual increase over the next 2 years could pay for almost all of the 12 solutions. Just buy the same pet food for 2 years, right? Or consider, ladies, the world will spend $112 billion on cosmetics this year, and it's increasing by $39 billion a year. Cosmetics, makeup, Botox, versus having food for your child, versus infant mortality, versus safe pregnancies. So wouldn't you agree, we can afford to spend $35 billion to make the world amazingly better off? And that's Bjorn's goal, that's his book, that's his whatever. These 12 best investments offer a breathtaking opportunity to improve the world in ways that really matter, and it's time to do the best things first. And you do that here every week. When you serve, you're making a difference in the world. We here at Unity are creating a vibration and a collective consciousness that's radiating out. But you can support this work in prayer. You can support this work in looking up the 12 goals and seeing if there's something locally that you could participate in. Or you could just buy the same pet food for the next 2 years and not increase your pet food spending, right? I think there's one last slide there, Jack. Best things first. $35 billion a year to make the world amazingly better off. And I wanted to bring that message back to us today because it is Volunteer Appreciation Sunday. And this is a group of people who are volunteering their best intelligence, their best solutions, their best of everything to make the world a better place for everyone. And you guys do that every week that you're here, serving, giving, and loving. So let's take that whole idea into prayer and bless our world, bless each of you, and take a moment to do that. It was Martin Luther King who said, "We must evolve for all human conflict a method which rejects revenge, rejects aggression, rejects retaliation, and the foundation of such a method is love." And so as you center yourself in the allness of spirit, in the minds of those who are creating global solutions for our world, and then we rewind it back down to a blue chair in the sanctuary at Unity of Auburn. We are all instruments of the Most High. Each of you is expressing and releasing a radiance of spirit. I think about when Jesus walked in the crowd, how people felt the swish of his garments and the flow of the energy that preceded him. And the same is true for you. You matter. You make a difference. You are loved, and you are loving. And it's that beauty of appreciation and giving thanks that quickens your spirit. That as you give, so shall you receive. And you flow, you open yourself to the flow of spirit right now in all that you are. And as you flow out the goodness that you are, it empties you out and prepares you, opens the way for more blessings to be received, to stream through you. Our daily word says, appreciation centers my attention on God and away from what might be lacking. As I practice appreciation, my awareness of my blessings grows. directing my attention to all the good things I have and I am. At the level of spirit, you have everything you need. And as you pray, you touch the peace and perfection of the divine and claim the gifts of spirit that move in and through you. I give in love because I love to give. It's been a beautiful word in unity for many years. I give in love because I love to give. Let's affirm it. I give in love because I love to give. Everyone here who ushers, who sings, who shares, who runs the audio-visual, who unlocks the door, who cleans the place, who prints the bulletins, who serves in hospitality, who volunteers in the thrift store, those who set up the burning bowl at New Year's or the candlelight at Christmas. You are loved and appreciated beyond measure. And I know you are blessed by your giving. In the book of Ruth, where Ruth followed Naomi, her mother-in-law, and said, "Where you go, I will go. Where you dwell, I will dwell. Your people will be my people." She had an undying devotion, unconditional love to serve her mother-in-law. And it's in the book of Ruth that it says, "May the Lord reward you for your deeds, and may you have a full reward from the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come for refuge." So breathe that in. As you serve, as you give, you're protected, you're rewarded, you're blessed. Let a sense of pride vibrate in your heart. Again, that you make a difference. Your kind words, the air guns you buy for others, touch of a hand. And so let yourself be filled this morning with that generosity of spirit, with the blessing of appreciation and praise and thanksgiving. Pat yourself on the back. Well done, good and faithful servant. Well done. And for having this time this morning to thank each of you and praise and appreciate each of you in the name and through the power of the Christ Spirit. I am grateful. The Lord is grateful. And we say thank you. And so it is. Together we all say, Amen.
Please sing along with us.